welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Kyla, and in this video we're going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of October. And I'm not gonna lie, October was kind of a meh reading month for me. Like, don't get me wrong, I did have some 5 stars, but there were a lot of books that were just kind of the middle of the road, or that I just like wasn't overly excited about, a little bit forgettable. And there was also a lot of books that I just either didn't rate at all or found difficulty rating. It was just a wild time. I definitely tried to step outside of my comfort zone and read things that I don't typically read. Like, I read some classics, I read some horror, and like, I like light horror. I'm not like an overly horror gal, so I tried to incorporate that. You know, it was scary season. Like, I tried. I think next year I'm just gonna do a bit of me and pick books that are a little bit more my speed. I'm all for stepping outside your comfort zone, but it just did not go great, okay? So we're gonna talk about today. So let's first go over like my stats for the month and like what I actually read, and then we'll get into like the nitty-gritty of all the books. So I read a total of 17 books this month. 14 of those were novels, like actual novels, and then 3 of them were graphic novels. I also did have 2 DNFs, which is not included in that number, so technically I like read 17 and then some. You catch the drift there. And I had 4 books that I chose not to rate this month because for various reasons, which I will get into. I don't want to spend a ton of time on each and every single book because we would be here for freaking ever. So I'm going to briefly go over the ones that I did not rate and also the graphic novels, and then we will get into the actual books. So like I said, I have 4 books that I chose not to rate this month, and 2 of them were classics because I just find that it is so hard to rate classics. Like, unless it's an outward 5-star, I just find that it's so hard to rate because the language is obviously so different than what we are used to reading now. So that's a little bit difficult to like rate based on that, because the writing, while some people really appreciate that like old-timey language, I find it very difficult to follow sometimes. It just is like too much, and I feel like it takes away from some of my enjoyment because it's a little bit distracting. Say what you will, you know, everyone has their opinion on classics. So the 2 that I read were Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I would say out of the 2, I enjoyed Dr. Jekyll more. One, it's way shorter. I did not even realize this was a novella, which is just so cool. I feel like it paves the way for like horror novellas, which is really cool. And I enjoyed the story overall. Like, I knew the story of both of them pretty much, but I enjoyed the story of it overall. It's just so hard to rate. You know, the language is different, it's distracting. I find myself a little bit bored at times and just wanting things to like speed along, but everything I feel like in classics is like so drawn out. That was the case with Frankenstein. Frankenstein was just so drawn out, and like, I get the deeper themes from it. Do not get me wrong, I get it. It's a heartbreaking story at its core. I feel like it's like the OG story of like what happens when someone is bullied or just left alone and like not loved. Like, just truly heartbreaking. I get the deeper themes from it, but the writing is just, like I said, so distracting. There also were a little bit like a few problematic terms thrown in there, which I don't appreciate now, but like it's of its time. So another reason why I find rating classics so difficult. And this one, just, there was so much to it. I feel like this also could have been a novella. There was just so much and very repetitive. Like, I feel like the story of Frankenstein is very, very, very repetitive. It talks about the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, just in different ways, and I just was like, I'm ready to move it along. So I didn't rate those 2. I would say, like I said, I enjoyed Dr. Jekyll a little bit more, but I get the deeper themes of Frankenstein. The next book that I chose not to rate was The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. It's incredible, okay? I just find it so hard to rate memoirs because I feel like putting a rating on someone's life, I've talked about this before, just does not seem right to me. So I will share my thoughts and my feelings about the book, but I just don't feel the appropriate need to like put a star rating on someone's life story. But this was incredible. You know, I can tell that she probably had a ghostwriter of sort, but regardless, she still got her story across, and it's just so heartbreaking that like literally every single person in her life failed her in some shape, way, form, but also so empowering that like she's now on the other side of it and like just shows her strength as a woman. And like it was heartbreaking to read a lot of the things that like she went through, especially with her immediate family and all of that. Like, ooh, oh my god, like you just want to wring their necks the entire time. But just truly, like, not even them, like there were so many people in her life that just did not stand up for her and that kind of thing. An amazing book. I'm so happy that she got to tell her story finally, and that she is free from that, and or at least fingers crossed that she actually is. Who never knows, but like anyways, chose not to rate that, but really did enjoy it. Highly recommend reading it. And then the last one that I chose not to rate was Rouge by Mona Awad, and like how does one even rate this book? Because I do not understand if I enjoyed this book or if I hated it. I don't know. My brain like will not compute. It just is like feels a little broken after that book, if I'm being honest. Like, it's Mona Awad's writing, so it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's the kind of horror that I really enjoy, where it's weird, it's twisty, it's unhinged, woman's story of sorts, kinda sorta. It deals with deeper themes like grief and beauty and mental health and family trauma. It's done in like a fairy tale kind of way, so there's all these like cool things about it, but like the overall story is so strange, and I do not know if I enjoyed it or hated it. I cannot put into words my feelings about this book, so I could not rate it. Would I recommend it? I don't know. I don't know. I know there are some people who are doing book club discussions about this. I know that Elizabeth from Reading Riley did a live show with Kayla from Books and Lala and one other person. So I'll put the live show in the description in case you want to hear more eloquent people talk about it. But I just like, I don't know. Even after that live show, I was like, I get all your talking points, but like, I still do not know how I feel about this book. So chose not to rate it. And then, like I said, I did have 2 DNFs this month. The first one was The September House. This should have been my kind of horror, because it's kind of campy, it's kind of lighthearted, it's kind of silly. It just did not work for me. The writing didn't work for me. I really did not enjoy the plotline or the story, and I did not care where it was going at all. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. And then the second one was We Ride Upon Sticks. I was gonna read this as part of my like Witchy vlog, which I will link below as well as in the cards for if you haven't checked it out. I did have some wins from that vlog, so don't you worry. But I did DNF this one. I just like don't care about field hockey enough. This book is so heavily about field hockey because it follows a field hockey team, and like nothing happens. I read a third of the way through this, so over 100 pages, nothing was happening. We were just following a field hockey team, and like I don't care about field hockey enough, so I DNF'd that one. And then lastly, before we dive into the actual novels, I'll just quickly talk about the graphic novels that I read. So the first one was Crumbs. This one was so cute. This one's a chunker. Like, this is a hefty graphic novel, but I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was cute. There's a bit of a romance going on. There's a bit of fantasy and magical elements to it. I really enjoyed it. It's cute. It's a coming of age kind of story of like people trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives while also having a romance, and it's adorable. It also has queer representation in it, which we love. And then I also read Pumpkinheads, 5 stars, freaking loved it. I can see myself rereading that every single year. It's about two friends who go on an adventure, or they work at a pumpkin patch, but they go on an adventure in the pumpkin patch as like their last hoorah throughout the night, and it's so fun. Loved it. And then the third one that I read was Unfamiliar, which is like a witchy graphic novel, and it's so cute. I loved it so much. I cannot wait to read the new one. I know it just came out and like I need to read it immediately. If I didn't already say it's 5 stars, it's 5 stars. It was adorable and I would highly recommend for this time of year. So that is all of that. Now we can dive into the actual books, and like I'm looking at my phone because I read so many that like I need to make sure that I hit them all. So we're gonna go in order of star rating, and I'm gonna talk about the ones that I didn't enjoy that much first, and then we will work our way up. And these ones that I like didn't enjoy so much, I'm not gonna spend a ton of time on them, okay? We're gonna like try to one sentence, just a couple sentence this, and move it along quite quickly. So the first one that I have to talk about is a 2-star, and that was the Mary Shelley Club. I read this as part of the Screaming Color readathon that Gabby from Gabby Reads put on for her Patreon. She does it every couple of months or so, and it's so fun, and I freaking love that readathon. Normally I vlog it, but I didn't this particular one because I had so many things going on, and this book was thick for that weekend, so it would have been like the most minuscule vlog ever, so I just chose not to vlog it. But this book I didn't really enjoy that much. One, it was entirely too long. This is a YA horror that follows a group of kids who kind of put on these pranks. They also really enjoy horror movies, so there's like nods to different horror movies in it. That element I really enjoyed of this. I really liked the discussion along the different horror movies and like the inspiration for things, and like them talking about that part of it I really enjoyed. But I did not enjoy really any of the characters in this book. Like all of them are unlikable, especially our main protagonist. Like really all of them I did not enjoy whatsoever, and this book was just entirely too long. Like I got halfway through it and I was like, I truly do not care. Somehow I persevered and finished it, and I really wish I had just DNF'd because nothing exciting really happens in this one, at least in my opinion. There were a few kind of creepy moments, but not like overly scary. And yeah, I just did not enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to, but I did enjoy the nods to the horror movies, I will say that. And then I did have a handful of 3 stars this month. The first one is Middle Game by Shauna Maguire. I read this as a buddy read with my friend Melissa, and I'm so happy I did it as a buddy read because there was a lot in this book that I felt before going into it that would like go over my head. Surprisingly not really the case, but I did enjoy having someone to like talk things out with. It was just made the experience so much more enjoyable. So I feel like I almost gave it a little bit of a higher rating, even though it's only 3 stars because of that. But this one follows 2 siblings, Roger and Dodger, who were made. They don't really know that they were made, and their creator is going to be using them for something, and it really just follows their relationship, and that part of it I loved. I loved getting to follow their sibling dynamic because they're actually grew up like apart from each other and they connect in a really cool way, and I really enjoyed following their relationship and their growth, and like, you know, they come together and they fall apart and that kind of thing, and that was all really enjoyable. I loved it. I feel like these characters were so fleshed out that it's really easy to get really invested in them, so that's the part of it that I was like so here for. This is also a very long book, and like I get it, but at the same time I don't, because there is so much of this book like after the halfway mark that I just felt was so drawn out, and like truly nothing was happening, and it was just getting really repetitive, and then the ending just did not do it for me at all. I did not like the ending whatsoever, and I also felt like this was a book that would have thrived with an unsatisfying ending, but unfortunately it was kind of wrapped up in a nice little bow. I know this is part of a series, but I just felt like this one in particular like didn't really leave me on any sort of cliffhanger to make me want to pick up the second one. I don't know, the ending was just really unsatisfying for me, and like corn. I don't understand why the corn. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. Then my next 3-star was The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic. I was really looking forward to this one. This is like a cozy magical realism romance, and it had been compared to Practical Magic and Gilmore Girls, and like I even started to tab. So all of these like lighter blue tabs up at the front here are all of the like nods to Gilmore Girls or like the references to Gilmore Girls, but they stop like so early on in the book. Like you get a few like, oh, okay, I understand where that reference was coming to, up until page 73. And then after that, doesn't really give Gilmore Girl vibes at all, which is fine. That's not really why it was a 3-star. It was just overall okay. This one follows our main character, Sadie, and she is from a magical family that is known for having like curses on them, but they also like take care of the town kind of situation. And her grandmother actually passes away, so the rest of the family kind of comes together and they have to try to like break this curse and do all of these things. But I did not expect this to be like so heavy on the grief. So definitely go into this with the mind that like this is heavily talks about grief. Like I know it says heartbreak on the cover, but I was not expecting that much heartbreak. I was expecting like more of like a romantical heartbreak. No, this is like heavy on the grief and it's a lot. I did not expect that going into it. So if you decide to read this, please know that it is a very grief heavy book, and like it's beautifully done, but it's heavy. But overall, I just found this to be okay. I thought it was a little bit drawn out. I liked our characters enough, but I wasn't like overly invested. I also was not overly invested in the romance that was happening. Really, my favorite parts were at the beginning where we were getting those like Gilmore Girl references, but once those stopped, it just wasn't as enjoyable to me. However, what I will say is what all these rest of these tabs are for. There are recipes throughout this book, which I love. So every single time there was a recipe, I actually tabbed it in case I wanted to like go back and make something. I don't know, maybe one day. But I do love when a book includes recipes. I just find it so fun. I enjoyed it. It wasn't an all-time fave. It was just a 3-star. And my last 3-star for the month was Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. I did read another Rachel Harrison, which did get a higher rating this month, so at least there's that. But this is her newest release, and this one was unexpected in a good way and a bad way. So it's actually really short. For how short it was, I just found it so boring. Like I just felt like it just dragged on and on and on, and I just kept waiting for it to be over, and it just felt like it was so long even though it was so short. I don't know, but the parts that I really did enjoy about it were this really breaks down breaking out of childhood trauma and like constructs that are maybe forced upon you to learn and like agree with growing up. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to give any of this book away, but there's a certain theme throughout it. So it talks about breaking free from that and what that can look like and what that can feel like and how other family can react to you if you try to do that kind of thing. I'm sure you can kind of guess where this is going. So that part I actually found very relatable, not in so much of like a heavy theme, obviously, in my life, but I, you know, did grow up believing one thing and then as an adult kind of formed my own opinions, and it definitely has affected family in different ways and that kind of thing. So I found that to be very relatable and I enjoy that theme overall. I just don't feel like this was executed in like the most enjoyable way or the most engaging way. I don't know. There were some scenes that I found really creepy. There were some scenes that were just a little bit scary where she goes back to her childhood home and some things start happening, but overall I just found this to be more of a literary than like an actual horror. And some people might disagree with me, and that's totally fine, but that's just kind of how I felt. And again, the ending just like didn't do it for me, so I gave this 3 stars. But that's okay, because now we'll roll into my 4 stars, and my first one is actually Cackle by Rachel Harrison. So there we go, you know, it's okay. Every author has a mixed bag, shall we say. This one I really enjoyed. This one is also more literary than I was expecting. I actually was expecting this to have way more witchy vibes than it actually does. The witchiness in here is so subtle and like not actually said until the very end, which I really wasn't expecting, but I actually kind of like that because I feel like it builds almost this tension throughout the story. And I just found our main character so relatable. If there's anything that Rachel Harrison does really well, it's main protagonists that are extremely relatable for a 30-something-year-old or a late 20s. Like, it just, all the things that they're going through of like trying to figure out life and like life paths and is this right? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? I don't know. Is this my career? I don't know. Going through a breakup and going through this. Like, it's all very relatable and I really enjoy that. In this one, our main protagonist did just go through a breakup and she moves to a smaller town because she has to take on a new job and she meets a new friend and, you know, some things start happening. And also the town is very eerie, has really good creepy atmosphere. Like, it's really good creepy small town vibes and I really enjoy that. I love it. There also is one aspect of this book that I did not enjoy so much, but this is a more me problem. And let's just say if you don't like spiders, I don't know if this is going to be the book for you. Although I will say that I have had people, since I voiced that, because I did include this in my witchy vlog, say that they don't like spiders, but they liked the spider in this book, so take that with what you will. I don't do spiders in any shape, way, or form. There's no way that you can like try to make spiders cute to me. It's not gonna happen. I see what you tried to do here. It didn't work for me. But overall, I really enjoyed the story. I love where it ended. And the epilogue, oh my goodness, it's so good. I almost want another one. And that's saying something. And then in that also witchy vlog, I read In the Company of Witches by Orly Wallace, and I gave this one actually 4.5 stars. Another family-driven witchy story. This is a cozy mystery, and oh my goodness, I can see myself rereading this book every autumn, or like at least going for like the next in the series every autumn, because this was so cozy, so heartfelt, and it just gave me all of the warm fuzzies. In this one, we are following our main character, Bryn. She lives with her aunts and they run her B&B. One night, a woman dies while she's at their B&B, and the aunts get accused of murdering her, and Bryn has to go out and try to find out what really happened to kind of clear her aunt's name. And oh my gosh, it's so cute and cozy, but also covers topics of grief and like done in such a beautiful, kind of subtle way. Also explores the themes of family trauma and just like family secrets, and takes place in a very small town. The vibes of this are just immaculate. I loved it so much, and the end scene almost gave me like, it almost made me cry. I got a little misty, okay? It just was beautiful, and I can see myself rereading it. I freaking loved it, and I already want to reread it. My next 4-star was A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I freaking loved the way this book was told. It was told in kind of diary/letter form, and I really enjoyed that. I feel like it really made this book kind of come to life because you're getting her inner thoughts, and it is just so beautifully done. So if you don't know, this book is following the first bride of Dracula and kind of her experience of going through what that looked like meeting him, going through a transformation, and then life with him afterwards. And it is just, it's beautifully done. The writing in this book, like, you cannot fault it. It's absolutely gorgeous. And like I said, I really liked the form of the diary. We also get kind of a epilogue of sorts at the end with a perspective switch, which I also really enjoyed. I feel like that was definitely needed. While it still would have held an impact with just her point of view, I think getting that other point of view at the end just really tied the whole story together, and it was really beautifully done. It's heartbreaking, it's tragic, it's so eerie, and the aesthetic in this book is just on point. It's also so subtle, like in the way that it's not outwardly said that this is like the first wife of Dracula. Like, she doesn't ever mention him by name. She just calls him Love or what have you. Like, there's not ever that outward outwardly like this is a book about Dracula. So it has this almost like mysterious tone throughout it, and it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. It didn't give me 5-star energy, but I can understand why it gives so many other people 5-star energy. And then my last 4-star was The Bone Houses. This is like a fantasy romance with zombies? Question mark? This is like zombies in no other way that I've seen done before, and it was really interesting. So in this one, we are following our main character, Rin, and she takes care of her family, and she also protects her town by taking care of the bone houses, which are basically these skeletons that kind of come to life, and she has to unalive them again. And it's just such an interesting take on it, and it's so fantastical, and I love it. And then one night, a mysterious character comes to the town and shakes things up and then invites her to go on this adventure because Rin and her family are kind of down and out and she needs some money. So invites her to accompany him while he kind of goes on this quest. So we have this kind of like quest story going on too, while also simultaneously being kind of a zombie story, while also being a fantasy romance. There's so much going on, but it works so well. I loved how this was told. The writing was really well done. It was so easy to follow, and I was so invested on what was going to happen on this quest and what was going to happen in this town afterwards, and with Rin and this romance. Oh my god, I was invested in all of it. I needed to like read it as fast as possible. Also, just the autumn vibes in here were really good, and the overall aesthetic of like the town and what everything looked like while they were going through this quest was so vivid. I felt like I was there with them, and I just really, really, really enjoyed it. Also, there's a goat in here that's just like truly the star of the show, and I'm so here for that. I'm so here for it. We are near the end. I have 2 5-stars left to share with you, and I have been just gushing about them, so I'm gonna gush about them just a little bit more. The first one was The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw. I loved this book. I actually borrowed it from the library, and then immediately when I finished it, went on Pango and found a copy and ordered it for myself. And like, I'm just so happy that I did it because I am truly in love with this book so much. It's done in such a unique way where it's like not overly such a unique witch story, because it almost gives like, it's dark, okay? But so bear that in mind as I say this, but it almost gives like Hocus Pocus vibes, where we have these sister witches who were sentenced to death in this town years ago, and every year they come back for revenge in this town. So you kind of see like the Hocus Pocus themes there. We have sister witches who have come back for revenge, but this is done in such a unique way where it involves a lot of water, and also this kind of like, well, this is also a Hocus Pocus thing of like this song calling. Anyone come, little children? You get it. But like, it's done in that way, but this is so much darker than that, obviously, and Shay Earnshaw's writing truly just brings this book to life. But like I said, we have these 3 witches. They were sentenced to death back in the day, and every year they come back and they seek revenge in this town that has wronged them, and they do that by inhabiting the body of 3 teenagers in the town and unaliving them, essentially. And they have done it every year. Now the town has kind of almost let this go at this point. Like, it's become this thing that's just like going to happen every year, which is just crazy, right? If you think about that too hard, you're like, what in the world? All of these teenagers are dying every single year, and they're just like, well, what are we gonna do about it? Nothing we can do. But then someone new shows up in town, and as you can imagine, things happen and it goes from there. Like I said, this is truly like so dark, and I am obsessed with our main protagonist. I just loved her as a main character, and I loved her dynamic with this new boy Beau that comes to town, and they each kind of have their secrets. So Beau comes to town, he has like his own mission of like why he's there, and then she also has some secrets, not only of the town, but like what she's gone through in her life, and I just loved it. I ate up every single moment in this book. I did not want it to be over. Also, the ending is like so heartbreaking but beautiful, and I was not expecting it. I was expecting it to kind of end in a way, like it's darker toned, but I wasn't expecting as dark of an ending as we get. And while things do wrap up kind of nicely, they really don't. They really don't. And I could just go on forever about this book. I'm obsessed with it. I highly recommend it if you are looking for a good witchy story that's darker. This also would be like the perfect in-between read from summer to autumn, because it does involve a lot of water and like beach and that kind of thing. So it's the perfect in-between, and I cannot recommend this book enough. I'm obsessed with it. And then my last 5-star of the month is actually sitting behind me, so let's go on and grab her. This is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. This is a dark academia YA romantasy, and it is incredible. It is immaculately done. One thing that I will say is that the romance in here is a little insta-love for me, okay? It is a little insta-love, but like amongst all of the other things that are happening in here, you just can't help but be here for it, you know? And like, you all know, I'm not even like a romance gal, but I was just like, I'm willing to overlook the insta-love because I'm enjoying everything else that is happening in this book so much. This is another one that I immediately went out and got a copy of. One, because this cover is absolutely stunning and I needed it immediately, but also for how much that I loved this book. In this book, we are following our main character, Effie, and this book takes place like AD times, okay? Like, we have not even hit the 20th century yet. So that just shows like the timeline here, but we follow Effie. She really wants to be a writer, but women are not allowed in the writers' college, so she has to settle for going to architect school, and she gets this opportunity to go to this really old house and kind of draw up new plans for this house. And while she gets to stay there on site and that kind of thing, this house has had books written about it, and the author that actually lived there is like Effie's favorite author. So she cannot turn this opportunity down to like go to her favorite author's house and kind of redesign his home. But when she gets there, she meets his family, his son, and some things start happening that really kind of creep her out, and things take off from there. And so well done. It is so eerie and unsettling. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time because it's so subtly woven throughout the story that it just keeps you gripped, and you're like, what is going to happen next? Like, there's a little thing that happens, and then there's a little bit more of the story, and then there's something that happens, and then there's a little, oh my god, it's just perfectly trickled in to keep your attention. And then it really starts to like ramp up, and then obviously we have this romantasy going on, and it's great, and I just loved everything about it. This house also is on like a cliff situation, so we have like this aesthetic going on with this house, and the vibes of it are just perfect. Also a little bit like enemies to lovers, so it almost gives me a little bit of like Divine Rivals vibes, which like I was obsessed with, am obsessed with, let's be real. It also does explore themes of essay and mental health as well. Effie has been through some things, and I love the way that it was explored in this book and the way it was really brought to life and kind of brought together at the end. I just really appreciate that, and it would definitely added this element of like stress to everything that was going on. I was just like so devastated when this book was over. I like immediately wanted to do a reread. I'm not even lying, I may do a reread before the end of the year. That's how much I loved it. It's just incredible, and I really, really, really want another one. I want another one. I don't think there is a way that that could happen, but I want another one. So I'm excited to see what Ava Reid does next, because this was truly incredible, and I cannot stop thinking about it. And that is all the books that I read in the month of October. So overall, like a good reading month. It was just all over the place. November is definitely going to be a more me reading month. We are getting back into a lot of fantasy, stepping away a little bit from the horror, and just reading things that are going to make me so happy. Fingers crossed. But I would love to know what your favorite book of October was, and also what your least favorite book of October was, because since I had a polarizing reading month, I want to know about yours, so definitely let me know about that in the comments. Also, if you have checked out any of these, I would love to know your thoughts as well. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe if you are not already. Turn the bell so you never miss a video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!